tell you about Ravenswood. You know, I am an unlikely candidate to be a winemaker. You know, I started out my history in a little place called Point Richmond, which was in the San Francisco Bay, but I grew up with two really remarkable parents. One of them was a nuclear chemist, that would be my mother, and the other one was a physical chemist, that would be my father. And somehow, remarkably, in 1952, they discovered wine. And because they were experimenters, and because my father was writing a newsletter and couldn't find simple words for wine, he decided that a 10-year-old would have easier words for wine. So, as a result, he would sit down with me on Friday nights or whenever he happened to have one of his wine tastings. And he'd put 12 glasses in front of me and he'd say, "What do these wines smell like?" And I'd say, "Geez, I don't know, but I'll work on it, you know." And so we'd have Chardonnays, and I might say they smelled like apples. And he'd say, "What kind of apples?" And I'd say, "I don't know from apples." And he would go out and he'd find different kinds of apples, Old Delicious and Northern Spy, and cut them up and put them in glasses, and we'd have to smell them so we could tell the difference between Golden Delicious and Northern Spy. So really by the time I was 18, you know, we had developed a whole wine vocabulary, and I had tasted nearly all the great wines in the world. You've got to realize that wine was much cheaper during those days. You know, for instance, the first case of wine my parents bought in 1952 included 45 Haut-Brion and 29 Chateau d'Yquem, and the entire case of wine cost $15.40. So wine was not, you know, exactly a big deal. In fact, you probably didn't drink wine unless you had a vowel at the end of your name. And Peterson definitely didn't have a vowel. So the fact that I learned about wine was unusual. Well, I never expected, you know, to be in the wine business. I followed my parents into, you know, the science biz. You know, did research immunology for a while, ran a clinical laboratory here in Sonoma while I was developing the winery. But in 1976, I crushed my first grapes at Joe Swan's winery. It was, you know, basically 327 cases of Zinfandel because I thought it was the best grape that we could do. And I was going to be a small, geeky little winery. I mean, I probably figured I might get to be 10,000 cases if it was a miracle. You know, I didn't have much money, you know, but I had a lot of heart and a lot of determination. So I made only single vineyard designated Zinfandels made precisely like I believed the best wines of Europe were made. Small open top fermenters, punched down by hand, native yeast fermentation, only French oak because I thought American oak was kind of a gross flavor that dominated the character of wine. So I produced these really spectacular wines, you know, and was discovered relatively early by Robert Parker, who gave these wines stellar scores, which of course didn't hurt me in the least. Well, you know, I really began seeking out old vine Zinfandel from special vineyards and really have relationships now that I had, you know, back then. Things like Old Hill, Dickerson, Belloni, you know, Big River. These are vineyards that have been with me for quite a long time. For instance, Old Hill has been with me since 1982. So very precise locations, really special wines. But when you make wines like this, you always have wine left over. Not every little lot, every little section of the vineyard ends up making the final cut. So I ended up making a Sonoma County old vine wine, which is pretty terrific, I have to say, and really began acquiring other old vineyards that I didn't think were quite suitable for, you know, single vineyard designates. Really good, but they didn't have that kind of precise, different kind of character that each vineyard has to have. So I began making more Sonoma County. And that one was pretty successful, so I branched out and started making Napa because I was also making single vineyards from Napa. And we do a Sonoma County Cabernet now, and we do a Sonoma County Merlot. So really, all these wines are big red wines. That's what Ravenswood stands for. No wimpy wines, big red wines. That's our mantra. That's what we like to make. We like to make wines with character, wines of place. Well, fast forward to 1983. You know, we're going broke. Basically, we have no cash flow. We're selling our wine, that's fine. We're getting great scores, but you know what? You know, our receivables are 120 to 300 days sometimes. It's just ridiculous. So one of my partners, who's a Harvard Business School graduate, Reed Foster, comes to me and he says, you know, he says, we need to make a cash flow wine. I suggest you make white Zinfandel. I said, what, are you out of your mind? I don't do pink. I don't do sweet. I don't do wimpy. It's not going to happen. He said, well, you better think of something, because if you don't, we won't be here anymore. And I said, okay, what can I do? How about a red wine? How about a wine I can drink myself, but a wine that would be consumable earlier, you know, than the other wines I make? a wine that would be less expensive than the other wines I make. Does this actually work? 1983, nobody really knows whether this is going to work. Remarkably, I make 1,000 cases, which I think is a vast quantity of wine for the first vintage. And it sells out instantaneously. I think, oh my God, this is incredible. Actually, for the first time in my life, I sold 56 cases, which is a pallet of wine, in one place. And I'm thinking, this is pretty remarkable. So the rest is history. You know, that little Zinfandel is now the most sold Zinfandel in the entire universe, really. You know, if you consider that, you know, there aren't too many places in Mars that make Zinfandel. It's pretty remarkable. So it's actually grown, and it's good. I mean, it's grown not because I'm a great marketer, but it's grown because people like it, because it serves a need. People like a good wine to have on their table that they can afford to drink on a regular basis. I still, of course, make my single vineyard wines, and those are the wines of my heart. But those are not the wines necessarily that make a lot of money. And you have to, unfortunately, think about this business not only as the art and all the lovely things that go with it, but you have to think about it as a business or you don't get to do the art. You know, I think Picasso had that one down a long time ago. So Ravenswood has thrived. You know, basically we make a lot of old line wine because I think those make the best wines. We still stick pretty much to our guns. There's a core flavor of Ravenswood, so it has very much the Ravenswood character to it. You can always drink a bottle of Ravenswood, you know, and say, ah, it tastes like Ravenswood. You can always go into a restaurant and go down the list. You can pick any bottle of Ravenswood that you want, and it will always say Ravenswood. You'll feel really comfortable with it. You know, I love making wine. You know, ultimately, it's all about me. So I hope that you drink a lot of it. Thanks very much.